The moment you stop running from your shadow, something incredible happens. You begin to see reality differently. You start noticing patterns, why certain people trigger you, why the same obstacles keep showing up, why no matter how much you try to change, something always pulls you back into the same old behaviors. The difference is, this time, you see the truth. It was never the world working against you. It was never bad luck or outside forces controlling your life. It was you. It was the unexamined parts of yourself quietly shaping your decisions from the background. Most people never reach this realization. They live their entire lives reacting, blaming, repeating. They think their fears are real, not just echoes from the past. They believe their limiting beliefs are facts, not programs written by childhood wounds. They hold on to pain, not because they want to, but because they've identified with it for so long that they don't know who they would be without it. But the truth is, you are not your past. You are not your fears. You are not the stories your mind has been telling you, and the moment you recognize this, you take back your power. But what happens next? How do you actually confront the shadow? How do you take something hidden and bring it into the light? The first step is awareness. Start by watching yourself, your thoughts, your reactions, your emotions. Pay attention to what triggers you the most. When something makes you angry, defensive, or deeply uncomfortable, don't dismiss it. Ask yourself why. What is this emotion trying to tell you? What part of you is being reflected back? The people who annoy you, the situations that frustrate you, these are mirrors. They are showing you the parts of yourself that you have disowned. If you find yourself hating arrogance in others, ask yourself, have I been suppressing my own confidence? If you judge people for seeking attention, ask, do I secretly crave recognition but feel ashamed to admit it? The answers might surprise you. The second step is radical self-honesty. The shadow thrives in denial. It wants to stay hidden because the ego fears change. But if you truly want to break free, you must be willing to see yourself clearly. This means admitting things you don't want to admit. It means acknowledging the ways you've sabotaged yourself. It means owning the fact that sometimes you were the problem. But here's the key. This isn't about shame. This isn't about judging yourself. It's about understanding that the parts of you that you've been rejecting aren't evil. They aren't bad. They are simply unintegrated aspects of who you are. Imagine a child throwing a tantrum because they feel unheard. If you ignore them, they scream louder. If you punish them, they become more rebellious. But if you acknowledge them, if you listen, if you meet them with understanding, they calm down. Your shadow works the same way. The more you reject it, the more it controls you. But the moment you turn toward it with curiosity instead of fear, everything shifts. The third step is integration. This is where true transformation happens. Integration means taking the parts of yourself you once feared or denied and making them conscious. It means understanding that your anger can be turned into strength, that your jealousy can be transformed into inspiration, that your fear, when faced directly, can become courage. Every trait you reject has a purpose. It just needs to be understood and redirected. Take a moment and think about the qualities you dislike about yourself, the emotions you avoid, the thoughts you suppress. Now ask yourself, what is the hidden power in this? If you struggle with jealousy, what if that jealousy was actually showing you what you deeply desire but have been too afraid to pursue? If you experience deep anger, what if that anger was really a signal that you've been ignoring your boundaries? If you procrastinate, what if that resistance is revealing something about what truly excites or drains you? The shadow is not just darkness. It is also a map to your greatest potential. Carl Jung spoke of the golden shadow. He believed that just as the shadow contains our fears and wounds, it also contains our hidden greatness, the talents, passions, and strengths we have denied. Maybe you were told as a child that you shouldn't be too confident, so you learned to downplay your abilities. Maybe you were taught that creativity wasn't practical, so you buried your artistic side. Maybe you suppressed your leadership instincts because you were afraid of being judged. But these are parts of you that are meant to be reclaimed. The things you admire most in others, those are also reflections of your shadow, your golden shadow. The qualities you see in them exist in you too, waiting to be awakened. Once you begin this process, life starts to feel different. You no longer see challenges as something to fear, you see them as opportunities to learn. You no longer take things personally. You recognize when something is a projection. You no longer feel like a victim of your circumstances. You understand that you are the creator of your reality. This is the power of shadow work. It frees you from unconscious programming. It breaks the cycle of repeating the same mistakes. It allows you to step into the fullness of who you truly are. But here's the thing. This is not a one-time process. Your shadow is always evolving. As you grow, new layers will emerge. New challenges will appear, showing you what still needs to be integrated. The work never ends. But with each layer you uncover, you become lighter. You become more powerful. You become more you. And this is what they don't teach you in school. This is what most people never realize. True transformation doesn't come from pretending to be perfect, from avoiding discomfort, from ignoring the hard truths. It comes from facing yourself, fully, honestly, without fear. Imagine waking up tomorrow and no longer being controlled by your past. Imagine stepping into situations that used to trigger you and feeling completely calm. Imagine having full control over your thoughts, emotions, and actions. Not because you suppress them, but because you understand them. This is what happens when you integrate your shadow. You become whole. You stop running. You stop reacting. And you start living from a place of true power. So the question is, are you ready? Are you ready to meet the parts of yourself that you've spent your entire life avoiding? Are you ready to face the fears, the wounds, the truths that have been hidden in the background, shaping your reality without your permission? Because the moment you do, everything changes. This is your invitation, not to become someone new, but to remember who you've always been. To take back your mind, your energy, your life, because once you step out of the shadows, you step into your power. And once you see the truth, you can never go back. The moment you decide to face your shadow, you take the first step toward true freedom. But here's what no one tells you. This work isn't easy. It will test you. It will shake the foundations of everything you thought you knew about yourself. You will uncover truths that make you uncomfortable. You will realize that some of the problems you blamed on the outside world were actually coming from within. And that's the hardest part, accepting that the life you're living right now is a reflection of your unconscious mind. Most people won't do this work. They would rather stay in denial because denial is safe. It's easier to believe that life is just unfair, that other people are the problem, that success and happiness are things that only happen to some people. But that's the illusion. That's the lie that keeps people asleep. The truth is, your outer world is always mirroring your inner world. And the moment you take responsibility for what's inside, you gain the power to change what's outside. But let's get real. How do you actually do this? How do you stop running from your shadow and start integrating it? It begins with observation. Watch yourself, not in a judgmental way, but with curiosity. Start noticing when you feel triggered, when someone says something that makes you instantly defensive. Ask yourself, why? What are they touching within me that I don't want to see? When you feel intense jealousy, don't push it away. Instead, ask, what does this person have that I secretly desire but have been too afraid to admit? When you find yourself judging someone harshly, turn the question inward. Could this be a reflection of something unresolved within me? Most of the time, the things we criticize in others are the very things we have rejected in ourselves. The arrogance that bothers you in someone else might be a sign that you've suppressed your own confidence. The selfishness you hate in others might be a reminder that you've spent too much time neglecting your own needs. The success of another person might trigger you because deep down you don't believe you are capable of achieving the same. This is shadow work in action, turning the mirror back on yourself. The moment you do this, you break the cycle of unconscious projection. You stop blaming the world, and you start reclaiming your energy. But here's where it gets even deeper. Your shadow isn't just made up of fears and wounds. It also contains your greatness. Jung called this the golden shadow. the hidden potential that you have been too afraid to embrace. The truth is, most people are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of their own power. Because stepping into your power means taking responsibility for your life. It means you can no longer hide behind excuses. It means you can no longer say, "I'm not good enough," or "I could never do that." Because the moment you integrate your shadow, you realize that you can. Think about something you've always admired in others. Maybe it's leadership. Maybe it's creative genius. Maybe it's unshakable confidence. Whatever it is, ask yourself, why do I see this in them? Why do I admire it? Could it be that this same potential exists within me, waiting to be awakened? The golden shadow is the part of you that is destined for greatness but has been locked away because of fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of what would happen if you actually allowed yourself to shine. Maybe as a child you were told to be humble, so you learned to downplay your abilities. Maybe you were laughed at when you expressed yourself, so you started holding back. Maybe you were taught that success comes with sacrifice, so you convinced yourself that staying small was safer. But safe is not free. Safe is just familiar. And the longer you stay in that comfort zone, the more life will feel like a series of limitations instead of possibilities. And so here's the challenge. What are you no longer willing to suppress? What part of yourself have you been keeping in the shadows? Is it your voice, your creativity, your ambition, your intuition? What have you been pretending you don't want because wanting it feels too risky? This is where the work becomes powerful, because the moment you bring these hidden parts of yourself into the light, they stop controlling you. You stop self-sabotaging. You stop making excuses. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into a version of reality that no longer serves you. And this is where true transformation begins. You've heard the phrase, know thyself. But do you? Do you really know yourself? Not just the parts of you that you show to the world, but the parts you've buried, the parts you don't even like to admit exist. Self-awareness is the greatest weapon you will ever have, because once you know yourself fully, your strengths, your weaknesses, your hidden motivations, no one can manipulate you. No external force can control you. You become unshakable. This is why shadow work is the ultimate form of self-mastery. It is the difference between living unconsciously, reacting to life, repeating the same patterns, and living intentionally, as the creator of your own reality. But let's be clear, this isn't a quick fix. Shadow work is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey that unfolds over time, and the deeper you go, the more you will uncover. But the reward is freedom. The reward is peace. The reward is power, not power over others, but power over yourself. Because when you understand your shadow, you no longer fear it. You no longer hide from it. You no longer let it sabotage your relationships, your goals, your happiness. You become whole. You step into your fullest expression. So the real question is, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to face the parts of yourself that make you uncomfortable? Are you willing to sit with your fears instead of running from them? Are you willing to stop making excuses and start taking ownership of your life? Because if you are, everything changes. No more playing small, no more self-doubt, no more repeating the past. Just you, fully awake, fully aware, fully in control. This is the power of integrating your shadow, and once you do, you will never be the same again. When you integrate your shadow, you step into a version of yourself that most people will never know. You no longer move through life as a prisoner of your unconscious mind. You stop making decisions based on fear, doubt, or unhealed wounds. Instead, you become intentional. You begin creating instead of reacting. And once you reach this level of awareness, you start to see something fascinating. The world around you changes because you change. Most people believe that external circumstances dictate their reality. They think that luck, fate, or outside forces determine their success, relationships, and happiness. But the truth is, your inner world shapes your outer world. The thoughts you think, the beliefs you hold, and the emotions you suppress all act as invisible architects of your life. This is why shadow work is so powerful, because the moment you bring your unconscious patterns into the light, you reclaim control over them. But let's talk about the resistance, because there will be resistance. Your ego doesn't want you to change, it wants to keep you safe. Safe inside the comfort of the familiar. Safe inside old beliefs, even if those beliefs are destructive. This is why, when you start doing shadow work, you might feel an overwhelming urge to stop. Your mind will come up with 1,000 excuses. This is too hard. This won't change anything. Maybe I don't need this after all. That's your old self trying to survive. Because the moment you integrate your shadow, you become someone new. You start making different choices. You stop engaging in old patterns. You no longer tolerate what once drained you. And that, to the ego, feels like death. So expect resistance. Expect moments where your mind fights back, where your emotions feel overwhelming, where you question everything. But this is where the real breakthrough happens, not when things are easy, but when you push through the discomfort and keep going. And if you do, you will unlock a power that few people ever tap into. Because here's the truth, shadow work is the key to personal freedom. It is the doorway to self-mastery. It is the path that leads you beyond limitation and into full creative power. When you integrate your shadow, you stop chasing things outside of yourself to feel whole. You no longer need validation from others. You no longer fear failure. You no longer get stuck in cycles of self-sabotage. You realize that everything you were looking for was inside of you all along. Think about how much time people spend looking for answers outside of themselves. They chase success, thinking it will make them feel worthy. They chase love, thinking it will make them feel complete. They chase distractions, hoping to escape the discomfort of being alone with their own thoughts. But none of that will ever work if they haven't done the inner work. Because no amount of success can heal a wounded self. Peak. No relationship can fix the fear of abandonment. No external achievement can erase the feeling of not being enough. These things must be addressed at the source, and the source is always within. Jung once said, "Your visions will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." That's the difference. Most people are dreaming. They are living in a state of unconscious repetition, caught in the illusion that the next goal, the next person, the next moment will finally bring them peace. But the awakened person, they know that peace is not something you find, it's something you become. And you become it by doing this work. So what does this look like in daily life? It looks like catching yourself in the moment when you start repeating an old pattern and choosing something different. It looks like acknowledging your emotions instead of suppressing them. It looks like sitting with discomfort and allowing it to teach you instead of running from it. And it looks like taking full responsibility for your reality. This is not about blaming yourself for the past. It's not about feeling guilty for the choices you made when you were unconscious. It's about realizing that from this moment forward, you have the power to change everything. Imagine waking up tomorrow and knowing, without a doubt, that you are in control, that no one else, not society, not your past, not even your fears, gets to dictate your life. Imagine stepping into every situation with clarity, confidence, and self-awareness, knowing that nothing outside of you has power over you unless you allow it. This is what happens when you integrate your shadow. You stop reacting and you start creating. You stop seeking and you start becoming. You stop fearing and you start living. But most people will never reach this point. They will hear these words and they will agree, they will feel inspired, they might even start thinking about doing this work. But then, life will pull them back into distraction. They'll go back to scrolling, to seeking, to numbing. They'll forget. The question is, will you? Because right now you have a choice. You can either walk away from this knowledge, continue living as you have been, and let your unconscious patterns keep running your life, or you can make a decision, a real decision, to wake up, to start asking the hard questions, to start sitting with your discomfort instead of avoiding it, to start seeing yourself not just as you wish to be, but as you truly are. And when you do this, everything will change. You will begin to see through the illusion. You will start recognizing patterns that were invisible before. You will feel a shift, a sense of power returning to you because for the first time, you are not running. You are standing in the truth. And the truth is this: you were never broken. You were never powerless. You were never lacking. You just had to remember who you were before the world taught you to be afraid. And now you know the way back to yourself. Most people go through life as passengers, unaware that their deepest fears, hidden wounds, and suppressed emotions are steering the wheel. They wonder why things never change, why they keep attracting the same toxic relationships, the same financial struggles, the same patterns of self-doubt and failure. But the truth is, reality isn't happening to you, it's responding to you. It's reflecting the unexamined parts of your mind, the beliefs you inherited, the emotions you never processed. When you start doing shadow work, you begin to see it clearly. You start recognizing how your past has shaped your present, the way you were spoken to as a child, the way you were made to feel small, the fears that were passed down to you. All of it still exists in your subconscious, dictating your choices from behind the scenes. The moment you realize this, you wake up. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of life and start seeing yourself as the architect of it. But here's where most people stop. They recognize their patterns, they acknowledge their wounds, but then they freeze. They don't take action because action requires change, and change is terrifying to the subconscious mind. Your shadow doesn't just hold your pain, it holds your comfort zone. Even if your current life is full of struggle, your mind has made peace with it. It's familiar, and anything outside of that familiarity feels like a threat. This is why so many people sabotage their own success. They start to make progress, they step into new opportunities, they get a taste of freedom, and then they pull back. They ghost the healthy relationship. They procrastinate on the project that could change their life. They find reasons to doubt themselves, to overthink, to stay exactly where they are. It's not because they don't want happiness, it's because happiness is unknown. Your subconscious isn't wired for happiness, it's wired for survival. And if you grew up in chaos, in fear, in struggle, then chaos, fear, and struggle will feel like home, even if you hate it. This is the harsh reality of shadow work. It forces you to confront the fact that you have been the common denominator in every experience of your life, that you have been unconsciously reinforcing the very patterns that you want to break. But here's the good news. If your shadow has been shaping your reality without your awareness, then imagine what happens when you bring it into the light. Imagine what happens when you start choosing your patterns instead of repeating them. Imagine waking up and realizing that every belief you've ever had about yourself was just a suggestion, one that you can rewrite at any moment. This is where true power begins. So how do you break free? How do you rewire the mind and integrate the shadow so that it no longer controls you? The first step is recognition. You can't heal what you refuse to see. Start paying attention to how you speak about yourself. Listen to the way you talk about money, relationships, success. Do you constantly say, "I'm bad with money," or "I always attract the wrong people," or "I'm just not good enough"? If so, ask yourself, where did I learn this? Who told me this? Is this my belief, or was it planted in me by someone else? Most of your limitations were never yours to begin with. They were handed down to you, programmed into you. But they can be unlearned. The second step is allowing discomfort. Shadow work is not about feeling good. It's about feeling everything. You will feel anger, you will feel sadness, you will feel regret for the years you spent living under false beliefs. But this pain is not your enemy, it is proof that something inside you is waking up. Most people avoid their emotions at all costs. They distract themselves with work, with social media, with relationships that keep them numb. But avoiding pain doesn't make it go away, it just buries it deeper. And what is buried always finds a way to surface. It surfaces in the form of anxiety, self-doubt, explosive anger, chronic fatigue. Your body carries what your mind refuses to process. This is why facing your emotions head-on is the most important thing you can do. So sit with your discomfort. When anger rises, don't suppress it. Ask it what it needs to tell you. When fear grips you, don't run from it. Ask it what it's protecting you from. When sadness washes over you, don't numb it. Ask where it's coming from. And when they do, they will change you. The third step is forgiveness, not just for others, but for yourself. Most of us carry guilt and shame over the things we've done in the past. We hold on to mistakes, regrets, choices that we wish we could undo. But the truth is, you didn't know what you didn't know. You were operating from old programs, old wounds. How could you have done better when you were still asleep to your own conditioning? But you're awake now. You see it. And that means you have the power to forgive yourself and move forward. This is where true healing happens. Not in rejecting the past, but in integrating it. The fourth step is conscious reprogramming. Once you've seen the shadow, once you've felt the emotions, once you've forgiven yourself, it's time to rewrite the script. Start by asking yourself, if I had no fear, how would I live? If I had no limiting beliefs, what would I create? If I trusted myself completely, what decisions would I make? And then act accordingly. This is the hardest part, because your old self will resist. Your mind will try to pull you back into the familiar. It will tell you, this isn't who you are, you've never done this before, it won't work. And this is when you must override the program. This is when you step into the unknown and choose differently. Because this is how transformation happens, not through thinking about change, but through embodying it. At first it will feel strange, like stepping into a new identity, but that's because you are. You are no longer the person who is controlled by their shadow. You are no longer the person who repeats the same patterns. You are no longer the person who doubts their own power. You are the person who sees clearly, who acts with awareness, who rewrites their reality in every moment. This is the power of shadow work. This is the power of taking back your mind. And once you do, the world will never look the same again. The moment you decide to reclaim your mind, everything changes. The world doesn't seem so chaotic anymore, because you finally understand that the real battlefield was never outside of you, it was always within. You realize that life isn't just happening randomly, it's responding to you, to the energy you put out, to the unconscious patterns you've been running. And now that you see them, now that you've faced your shadow, you are no longer bound by them. But here's something most people don't understand. This isn't about getting rid of your shadow. You don't eliminate the parts of yourself that you once suppressed. You don't erase your fears, your anger, your wounds. You integrate them. Integration means recognizing that every emotion, every impulse, every part of you has a message. Your anger exists to show you where you need stronger boundaries. Your jealousy reveals what you secretly desire but haven't allowed yourself to pursue. Your self-doubt is just a sign that you've been living inside an outdated belief system, one that no longer fits who you are becoming. The problem isn't the shadow. The problem is what happens when you ignore it. When you suppress your emotions, they control you. When you deny your desires, they turn into resentment. When you reject parts of yourself, they come back in distorted ways, through self-sabotage, projection, or unhealthy patterns that repeat over and over again. But when you bring your shadow into the light, something incredible happens. You stop fighting yourself. You stop seeing parts of you as bad or wrong. You realize that everything you've ever rejected about yourself holds power. Power that can be used, transformed, and directed toward your highest potential. Think about it. Some of the most driven, successful people in the world weren't born that way. They had fears, they had insecurities, they had shadows. The difference is, they learned how to use them. Instead of letting fear paralyze them, they turned it into fuel. Instead of running from discomfort, they leaned into it. Instead of denying who they really were, they owned it. This is what it means to step into your power, not by becoming someone else, but by becoming all of you. So now the question is, what happens next? You've seen your shadow, you've recognized the patterns, you understand how you've been shaping your own reality without realizing it. But knowledge alone isn't enough. Awareness is the first step. The real transformation happens in the decisions you make from this moment forward. So ask yourself, how will you show up differently? Will you still shrink yourself in the face of opportunity, or will you step forward, even if your voice shakes? Will you keep running from difficult emotions, or will you sit with them, listen to them, and let them teach you? Will you keep repeating the same story about who you are, or will you write a new one? Because that's the thing. You are not your past. You are not the mistakes you made when you were unconscious. You are not the old patterns that once defined you. The moment you bring awareness to your shadow, you have a choice. You can continue living by the old program, or you can rewrite it. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is the secret that most people miss. Enlightenment isn't about rejecting your darkness. It's about understanding it, owning it, integrating it. Because the more you accept yourself fully, the less power the world has over you. Think about how much energy you've wasted trying to be someone you're not, trying to suppress emotions, trying to fit into a version of yourself that was created for survival, not for thriving. Imagine what happens when all that energy is finally set free. Imagine how unstoppable you become when there is no longer a war within you, when every part of you is working together, aligned, whole. That is the power of shadow work. That is the power of self-mastery. And now the choice is yours. You can pretend you never heard this. You can push it aside, distract yourself, stay in the same patterns you've always known. Or you can step forward. You can start watching yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, your triggers. You can start asking the hard questions. You can start making different choices. Because the truth is, most people will never do this work. Most people will hear something like this and go right back to sleep, right back to blaming the world, right back to repeating the same cycles, convincing themselves that change is impossible. But you're here for a reason. Something in you knows that you are capable of more. Something in you is ready to wake up. So the only question left is, will you answer the call? Because once you step into the light, once you take full ownership of who you are, once you stop running from your own mind, there's no going back.